Arizona Cardinals star safety Budda Baker has requested a trade. How should the Cardinals handle the situation? Where is the safety market trending? We're breaking it all down today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Crabbs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We want to thank you for making Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day, and a big welcome to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single show, we appreciate you being here. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Have you ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise?
Yes.
Then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. Our listeners get a 100% free boost of their franchise when using promo code LOCKEDON in the game.
You know, I would be super giddy to manage the Arizona Cardinals in Ultimate Football GM and have this exact scenario pop up that the Arizona Cardinals are actually dealing with Budda Baker. Because I think there's a very clear and obvious path forward for the Cardinals. But we're going to talk about that at the end of the show after we talk about who Budda Baker is and what the top of the safety market looks like, all of the dynamics at play. But I'll drop the tease and you're going to have to stick around to the end. Cardinals should absolutely trade Budda Baker. That's my thoughts. We're going to talk all about why.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. And so let's set the table here. Adam Schefter reported that Budda Baker has requested either a trade or to receive a new deal that makes him the NFL's highest paid safety. So Budda says, hey, get me out of here, but if I got to stay, if you pay me more than anyone else at my position, I'll stick around and be part of this rebuild. Budda is entering year 3 of his 4-year, $59 million contract. So 2 years remaining on his current deal. This will be his 7th season, his age 27 season. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler, a 3-time All-Pro, and obviously one of the best safeties in the entire NFL with an Arizona Cardinals team that has a new coach, a new GM, and, of course, that low mark. They're the second lowest grade in the NFLPA player survey. So you can see why maybe Budda Baker has his sights on playing for a different team moving forward.
So Budda is a really fun player to watch because Budda, I think before you can talk about what his market is and the top of the safety market, you need to talk about who Budda Baker is as a player. And Budda Baker as a player is one of the most diverse back-end players in football right now for all of the different ways that you can use him. Now, he doesn't live on the outside at corner, but he just does just about everything else between the reps that he takes in the slot, the reps that he takes up high, the reps that he takes on the second level of the defense as a sub linebacker type or walked up close to the line of scrimmage. And the impact that he has is that he is this, you romanticize positionless players in the NFL. But positionless players in the NFL versus positionless players in college, I think, is pretty different, where a positionless player in the NFL means you can play 4 positions at a high level versus a positionless player in college is more of a player who you move around and uses your chess piece that you're going to scheme a specific responsibility for on any given play, and the play is designed to let that player make plays more often than not. Budda can do a lot at a high level.
Yeah, I mean, one of the game's top defensive players, certainly maybe the best safety in the league, high up there. And one of my favorite things to consider about Budda Baker and the player that he's become in the NFL, 6 seasons with the Arizona Cardinals to this point, is how high of a level he's been able to perform at despite not necessarily having the pieces around him. Mm-hmm. And we've talked for years about the Cardinals and their need for cornerback help and another guy next to him and linebackers and pass rush. Like, they've needed everything on defense for a while. And you talk about defense and doing your 111th. And when you got a bunch of guys that do that, you're going to be a really sound unit. And I don't think that Arizona's been able to build a consistent group. And somehow Budda's been able to step in there and, amongst a lot of instability, provide stability and really be accountable for him doing his job and making a lot of plays. And the takeaways have really ramped up. That was kind of the early talking point with Budda Baker. Well, where are the interceptions? Well, they've come the last 3 years. And, just a heart and soul type player, right? You watch the Arizona Cardinals play and you watch that defense, Budda Baker jumps off the tape, man. I mean, right? The energy that he plays with, the motor, right? You talk about the motor from like a pass rusher or a linebacker. This guy is a relentless football player in the secondary and can do so many different things. There's so much value that he brings to the table. And for as good of a player as he's been in Arizona, I get really excited about thinking him play somewhere else where it's a little more stable and he can really thrive and settle in.
So not to distract the entire conversation, but part of me thinks it's a no-brainer to trade Budda Baker so that we can see him play in a different environment with different surroundings. But dude, the guy has played over 5,000 defensive snaps the last 5 seasons. So he's averaging over 1,000 snaps defensively. I mean, and you saw on the in-season Hard Knocks what he had to deal with last season, and he was expected to miss a couple weeks and played through it. And you're talking about culture and heart and soul and leadership and leadership by doing. It's Budda Baker, and I think that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about the Cardinals being on Hard Knocks, where there was not a lot of redeeming showcases, but you got to see beyond the 60 minutes or the 3.5 hours that the Cardinals are on television weekly, more of who this player is, who is generally, I don't want to say underappreciated, but the conversation doesn't go to him enough with how good of a player he is and how good of a staple he can be for somebody's culture.
Yeah, looking forward to diving into this safety market here in just a moment. And, of course, really diving in on what the Cardinals should do. But, folks, maybe you do want to deal with situations like this. Well, then we got the game for you. It's Ultimate Football GM. If you want to be an NFL GM, check it out. When you play Ultimate Football GM, you get to control and manage every strategic aspect of your team as you play through seasons and lead your team to glory by trying to build a historic dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for hiring coaches and coordinators, managing all the finances, including player salaries and terms. You got to navigate your franchise through free agency, the draft, injuries, player and personnel issues, and all the ups and downs of a season. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free, playable offline, on the go, as you want and when you want to. Locked On NFL Scouting listeners, listen up. You get a 100% free boost to your franchise when using promo code LOCKEDON in the game. That's Locked On, so make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
So this Budda Baker contract that he currently possesses, you said he's coming into year 3 of it. Kind of interesting that the 4th year is a club option for Budda Baker as well. So, I mean, that you could be in a scenario where you wouldn't possibly do this with how good he is as a player, but whatever team ends up potentially acquiring Budda Baker, if he continues playing on this contract, will have a decision to make about the 2024 financials. But the current average per year for Budda Baker is 7th at the safety position in the NFL, and it trails Derwin James, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Jamal Adams, Jesse Bates, Harrison Smith, and Justin Simmons. All of those deals were signed in 2021 or more recently. So when Budda signed his most recent contract, he was the top of the safety market at $14.75 million per season. So his aspiration is to return to that same stratosphere or go play somewhere else.
And it's a pretty big jump, Kyle. This isn't a few bucks here. This is him seeking
about a 30. Draft dudes do math, but it's about a 33% raise.
Yeah, it's healthy. That's healthy. I mean, Derwin's at 19.1 as the number one in terms of average annual value. Budda Baker's chilling there at 14.75. He's looking for a big raise, and maybe he deserves it. And you can get into all kinds of conversations about, well, he's only halfway through the deal that he agreed to 2 years ago, right? There's always that talking point. But one of the deals with the safety market is how much of a reset it was in need of, right? It needed some guys to kind of push the top, and that's happened. And Budda was part of that. But since he's done that, a lot of guys have reaped the benefits of that. And it leads me to questions like, okay, well, he's at 14.75. Well, Kevin Byard's at 14.1. When does he ask the same question? It seems like Tennessee was just asking him for a pay cut. And another thing I'll say about this group of safeties, I would say it's pretty impressive. Like, you don't have a lot of guys like slugs in here that you're just like, I can't believe that guy's getting that, right? It feels like an appropriate list of guys that should be paid in the top 10 when it comes to their respective position group.
How do you feel if you're Budda Baker too? And you know that, on an annual basis, you're getting somewhere between, I could tell you, 11, this year it's $13 million. So between $11 and $13 million. And there's another safety on your roster that's getting like $2 million less per season than you are, in Jalen Thompson.
Yeah.
And you're thinking about Budda Baker and the quality of the player there. That gap should be significantly larger. So, I mean, even just looking at it from where Arizona is spending their money and what they're telling their players internally, I think the messaging there needs to probably be addressed as well if Budda's going to stick with the Cardinals.
So the safety market is obviously experiencing a bit of a boom, but that didn't necessarily extend to the extent that I thought maybe it would with Jesse Bates. And Jesse Bates got paid a lot of money to go to the Atlanta Falcons, $16 million a season. But that's not more than Jamal Adams. I mean, he's not top three. And you look at the dynamics of this safety offseason, and it's been pretty fascinating, right? Where Jesse Bates got paid a lot of money, but not the most. You saw Jordan Poyer come back to Buffalo for way less than we were anticipating. There's starting caliber players that are still out there. And the NFL just continues to be very, I guess, wishy-washy is the word with safeties, whether it's where they pick them in the draft, they seem to always slide a little bit. And then the contracts seem like, okay, some of the obvious ones, the guys get their money, but they're not necessarily getting as much as you would think.
Look at Quandre Diggs. Quandre Diggs on a new deal got 13.
Not even in the top 10.
Right.
It's fascinating.
This feels like, I feel like we often put safety and tight end in the same bucket for like the way the league is very wishy-washy with the valuation of them. Why do you think safety, like, even there were quality starters in free agency this year, like, I'll say his name again, Von Bell, right? Juan Thornhill. This guy's got 7.5.
Yeah.
So what distinguishes
good starters?
Obviously the elite players are the elite players, but those are quality starting safeties in the NFL. And their market is less than half of what Budda wants as the 7th highest APY of active contracts at the position. Does that hurt Budda Baker?
It doesn't hurt Budda Baker to me because those guys ahead of him are still ahead of him.
But if the opportunity cost is, well, I guess it hurts the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Because another team would say, well, if he comes to play with us versus the top of the market, it's probably a bargain, even though it's $4 or $5 million more than what you could get 10, 15% less of a player at for 50% of the cost. But he's willing to play on the deal. Versus if it's Arizona, you got to now go 3x above what Juan Thornhill and Von Bell just got to retain Budda Baker as a team who is getting ready to go through what is probably going to be a very ugly 2023. And by that point, you're then going to have to chase down San Francisco and Seattle. Never mind what happens with the Rams with their own reset. in the West.
So we're going to attack the question of exactly what the Cardinals should do with Budda Baker and take a look into the roster and what the path forward looks like with and without him, coming up after a very quick break.
I said it at the top, Joe. The Cardinals should trade Budda Baker. Is there a more busy guy these days than David Mulligetta?
No. No, that guy's got a lot to do.
He's moving a lot. One of the most powerful people in football right now.
Yeah, very quickly became that. Yes, absolutely.
Never mind the fact that he's an agent negotiating contracts. Mulligetta gets movement for his players seemingly more frequently or at a more higher rate than most other representatives across the league on a per client basis, it feels like. He just got done doing Ramsey. And now you're going to do Budda Baker.
Cardinals should trade Budda Baker, Kyle. Right now, they've got $19 million in cap space. That's the 8th most in the NFL. But looking forward to next year, they've got $23 million, which is 21st in the NFL. I feel like they're never going to have an opportunity greater than right now to trade him. I think Budda's trade value could not be more valuable. He's going to be 27 this year. And presumably the team that acquires him, he'll be willing to play on his deal, especially if that's the case. I mean, that's huge. But also this safety class is pretty limited. Daniel Jeremiah recently came out and put in a tweet that he thought it was paper thin. And we love Brian Branch. There's other guys that we like, but there's not this booming crop of safeties that teams can target. And so I think those dynamics in terms of Budda being firmly in his prime, between there not being a ton of opportunity out there to get a dynamic young safety in the draft, it just makes a lot of sense, especially when I extend the conversation even further to Arizona, where, how are they going to maximize Budda Baker right now or in the very near future? You try to find building blocks on this roster, and I struggle to find them, Kyle. I mean, Kyler Murray, for better or worse, is a building block.
Well, that's the argument to keep Budda, though, right? Is you don't have building blocks and you have one. But I get what you're saying.
What are the rest? Hollywood Brown, who's on an expiring contract? DJ Humphries? Jalen Thompson? Are these are the guys you're hanging your hat on as your building blocks? Does Budda Baker even matter? Are those guys?
Budda Baker doesn't matter because by the time you get the rest of your roster to a place where you're ready to roll, Budda Baker's going to be in his early 30s.
Right.
And he's going to need a new contract commitment in 2 years regardless. And if you don't move him now, you probably, if you keep him and he gets a new deal, you're going to have a window of time where you're dumping a lot of money into a player who the long-term benefits for aren't there.
This is a really random sidebar, but it's one of the most unbelievable things I've ever seen in my life. When I was studying the Arizona Cardinals and their contracts this morning, their highest paid defensive lineman in 2023 is Carlos Watkins at $1.5 million. What? This team is just lacking everywhere. This is pretty comfortably the worst roster in football.
I think there's a few that might give it.
Well, and we will answer that this summer. We will answer that question.
Yes,
we will answer that question.
So let me ask you a question: does DeAndre Hopkins get traded or does he get cut?
Yes.
Specifically, I need to know from a cap perspective.
I think that he will get traded on draft day. It's maybe day 2.
So we're going to assume he gets traded. Okay, so the Cardinals will save $8 million. Are we going to meet Budda Baker's request for a new contract, or are we going to trade Budda Baker?
No, we should trade Budda Baker.
Okay, so let's say you trade Budda Baker. You could save another additional $9 million. So now you've gone from a handful of $1 million in cap to about $22 million in cap space. Right? And this is according to Spot Track. So I'm on their manage the roster function. How about Zach Ertz? You want to keep Zach Ertz as a 33-year-old tight end? You think you might be able to get something for him?
I don't, especially after I just drafted Trey McBride with my first pick last year.
Right, and that's a $12.6 million cap hit for a 33-year-old tight end with a couple years left on his deal. That, again, if you move him now and you embrace what this year is going to be, you can get something. But if you wait until 2024, it's the same thing with Budda Baker, right? Well, Budda Baker, now, if you play hardball with him, he'll be going into a contract year. It takes away some of the value and incentive for a team to give you good assets because it's like, well, then we need to make a decision sooner rather than later in the contract.
When they acquired Zach Ertz, it was Tay Gowan in a fifth-round pick.
Right.
That's what they got then.
You could get better than that for Zach Ertz now, probably.
You think so?
You're going to eat some of the dead cap, so it's a financial discount for whatever team is acquiring him. You can't tell me you couldn't get a fourth-round pick for Zach Ertz.
I don't think you can. I think this is a late day 3 pick.
Well, in that case, then you shouldn't keep him. Then you shouldn't move him. You should just keep him. The players you want to move are the players that are either going to save you significant financial amounts of money or the players that you're going to get something for. Nuke saves you a significant amount of money. Budda Baker you get something significant for. With the dead cap as it's structured right now for Zach Ertz, you wouldn't save a bunch of money. So then in that case, you might as well just keep him. But I think you can get a fourth-round pick for Zach Ertz.
What do you think you can get for Budda Baker? And how much does the Jamal Adams trade complicate this?
That's what Arizona's going to bring up in every conversation, right?
Absolutely. But also at the same time, like we've learned the NFL's not going to just do that, right?
Right.
They didn't meet the immediate demands for DeAndre Hopkins.
You think you could get a 2+ for Budda?
Man, I hope so.
If I were a competitive team and I needed defensive help, a 2+.
Minka was a 1 and a 5 and a 6.
Yeah, and I think there was I was going to say there's late round pick swaps in there.
There's just not a whole lot of case studies to point to here.
For safety
Clinton
trades.
Dix in 2018 went for a 4.
Right, and then you have the it's a little bit different, but because it was more of a cap dump. But the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson trade this year doesn't help either because that was a 5.
Right, you have bad case study across the board to consider. Minka wanted, that was a weird situation.
Minka's probably the best case example, though, because he had 3 years left on his rookie deal plus the 5th-year option. Now, he wasn't as established as what he is now. He played 1 solid rookie season.
So they basically, that trade was for a 1 in Minka, and then
a bunch of
Pittsburgh got a 4 and a 7 and a 5 and a 6 back. So it was like a modest trade up from the 5 to the 4, but a move back from the 7 to 6. What a weird trade. It winds up, it's basically a first-round pick.
Right.
Can the Cardinals get a first-round pick for Budda Baker?
Philly.
Right. That later pick?
Yeah.
If they do this.
It's the kind of move Howie would make, isn't it?
Right. Watch them get Jalen Carter and Budda Baker with their 2 picks.
So he's due. Budda's due. How much cash this year? It's about 13 in cash.
Yeah.
Okay, so a new team, any new team that would acquire him would owe him $13.096 million. Eagles have that right now, I'm pretty sure, don't they? Eagles have $19.7 million in cap space.
Yep.
Right now. You don't got to do anything to the deal. Bring him right in. 30. Send pick 30.
Pick 30.
Cardinals would have to be thrilled with that. And then still trade down from 3. Right now you're talking about building a nucleus of a team, and 2 years from now having building blocks.
For Arizona. Right.
For Arizona.
Yes. But he's going to be a 30-year-old safety before he means anything in Arizona, unfortunately. It's just how it is.
And that's not about his caliber of play. That's the state of the Arizona Cardinals.
Right. Tough situation out there.
Make the trade.
Make the trade.
Howie Roseman, pick up the phone.
Yes.
Get it done.
Just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but sense for both sides. Sense for you hopefully involves more Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes in your life this week. We are about 10 days away from the 2023 NFL Draft. Joe, what are we doing on draft night? You got any plans?
Oh, I got a big old plan right here on the Locked On NFL Scouting YouTube channel. We've got some fun stuff coming up on YouTube over the next 2 weeks. So if you're not subscribed on YouTube, change that. Find us. Hit that subscribe. Turn on the bell for the notifications. We're going to have a lot coming your way.
Become an everydayer.
Do that.
Because it's your teams every day here on the Locked On Network, across the board. Appreciate you guys checking out the show. You can find us on YouTube wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Our NFL draft coverage next week will be live shows on Thursday and Friday. Come hang out with the dudes. Hit subscribe on the YouTube, as Joe said. Plan accordingly. We hope to see you then. Hope to talk to you all tomorrow. Make it a great rest of your day, and we'll be back to talk again. More NFL football soon. Peace.